today's episode, everyone. Today we're starting what's called the mini crime flip series. Do you see that? The police just drove by here. So we've even got colleagues here, and today is the first episode, and it's going to be about crime flips. What does crime flips mean? Crime flips refers to properties where we managed a successful flip, and at the same time there was something from the criminal world involved. That means a murder or a fire, a flood, anything that was investigated by the police, where there was evidence, where there was, well, some kind of crime plot. Right now we are in Městě Králové on Míru Street. And here I'd like to tell you about a flip I did a few years ago, which had an interesting twist. There was actually a fire at the property. And now when I come back here after years, I see that the house is no longer here. In the end, they demolished it, but the story is very interesting, so let's take a look at it. It's roughly in the center of the town. The plot is just under 1,000 square meters. And actually, as I remember when I was here, in that part over there, there used to be a house standing, which is no longer there. The house number has been cancelled. So what was going on here? This flip wasn't easy. Even when I was buying it, the thing was that part of the property was under foreclosure. There was a foreclosure auction, which I won. I auctioned off half of the property and then negotiated with the other co-owner. I managed to consolidate the entire property after about a year, yeah. It wasn't exactly easy, but in the end I managed to consolidate it, and I got the whole property together for about 650,000 crowns. I thought to myself, Central Bohemia, an interesting location. At the prices back then, the property could be worth around 1.5 million. Then I started figuring out what needed to be done with the property so it could go up for sale, since I now owned the whole thing. But we found out that the former owner was still living there, and he drank a lot. He had problems with the law and even had some executions against him. But the main problem was that there was a meth lab in the property, which had exploded several times, and the police had intervened here multiple times. Problematic individuals would gather here, and during our on-site investigation we found out that they really were under the influence of addictive substances, that the former owner was drunk, and they were even aggressive. So we had no choice but to file what's called an eviction lawsuit, because we were dealing with this every few months. There was always a problem with drugs, there were junkies here, so we filed for eviction. The eviction lawsuit was successful and proceeded very quickly. Within 3 months it was all done. We obtained an enforcement order, which we handed over to the bailiff to carry out the eviction and clear the property. In the meantime, we advertised the property and even found a buyer. We found a buyer for 1,300,000 Czech crowns, They took out a mortgage for it. The registration process was already underway, and it was arranged that the bailiff's eviction would actually take place on the same day the property was handed over to the new buyer. That means I bought it for 650,000 and sold it for 1,300,000. And on the day when the bailiff arrived, when the property was supposed to be handed over to the new owner, the former owner and tenant, who actually had the meth lab here, set the house on fire. He actually said in advance that he would set the house on fire, and so he did. The fire was quite extensive. Several fire trucks responded to the scene. We were called in as well. Here you can also see photos of what the house looked like. So this was a major problem. Of course, the man was arrested, and then I don't even know how the trial turned out, how many years he got, but I think he's serving his sentence. However, the main issue was that there was a lien on the property. The transfer had already taken place, and now the house was actually burned down. What to do about it? The main thing being dealt with was the insurance company, because the owners who bought it from me for 1,300,000 were of course unhappy that they were buying a property that was burned down. On the other hand, I was thinking that I already had 1,300,000 in escrow and that I would have to return it. So we started dealing with the insurance company, and we started dealing with the insurance company. Which insurance company should pay out the claim? Either mine. I had insurance for 1.5 million, but the buyer had insurance for 3.5 million, because that already included the planned renovation that would take place in the future. It was simply valued higher. That means if I had kept the house, we cancelled the purchase contract because of the fire, I would have received 1.5 million from the insurance. I wouldn't have lost money on it. In the end, the prospective buyers calculated that it would be more profitable for them to collect a higher insurance payout. So they decided to keep the property. I got my money back from escrow and they now own the property. So the property is no longer here. The house has been demolished, the house number is gone, but they still have the building plot. Yeah, nothing is happening with it. I checked the land registry and there are no new entries, so they still own it. Maybe they'll build something here. Yeah, this is where they have the access road. The house could have stood over there, and that was basically the whole story of what happened here. Yeah, so a meth lab, foreclosure, alcohol, trouble with the police, and in the end it all led to a fire. Yeah, of course, he was drunk, then he regretted it, you know, all that. But sometimes that's just how it goes. Eventually it ends with the fire, the insurance payout, and here you have a cleared plot of land. Yeah, and then we talked to the neighbors around here, and everyone confirmed to us that they're glad it's gone and that there really were big problems here, drug addicts, thefts, and so on and so forth. So actually, even though it ended up kind of over the line and really turned into this crime story, in the end, it turned out well. Yeah, the property is gone, there are no more problems here, there's no meth lab, and the buyers actually have the property now. So be careful about what you buy, who you buy it from, and always make sure your property is insured for at least its replacement value. That means the amount it would cost to rebuild the entire house. Yeah, that can often be several times higher than the purchase price. So keep flipping, but be careful about it. We just saw a successful flip, bought for 650,000, sold for 1,300,000 in Městek Králové, Miru Street, house number 512, where there was a burnt out house, now even without a house number, house. And now we're moving on to Hnatnis, where you'll discover the remnants of the so-called rum affair. So let's go. We have an hour and a half drive ahead of us to Eastern Bohemia, and make sure to subscribe. Give it the like if you enjoy this content. Bye. So after an hour and a half from Městec Králové, we've arrived in a village in the Ústí nad Orlicí region, Eastern Bohemia. This is the village of Hnatnice, and here I'd like to pause for a moment. This was one of my, let's say, older flips, but it's connected to a criminal case in Czech history, namely the so-called rum affair. It was extensive, it happened all over the Czech Republic. A lot of people were involved in it, politicians, high-ranking police officers. I personally know one of them from Vysoké Mýto. Greetings to Slavek. Oh, actually, the rum affair had this connection. When I bought the property, I think it was at an auction in Hradec Králové, and I sold it for about 450,000. Yeah, so the total purchase at the auction was 450,000. It was a physical auction and I made the highest bid. I think I was actually the only one there at the auction. Or maybe there were two of us, I don't know. Honestly, I can't quite remember now. Nevertheless, I won it at auction for 450,000. Afterwards, I knew exactly what I was going to do with the property. The property was in very bad condition. I wasn't planning a major renovation, but I did plan to basically clear it out, clean it up so that the buyer could come in, walk through the rooms and see for themselves whether there's any dampness or not. Then based on that, they can make their choice. At that time, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, I started offering the property for 950,000. Why so little, you might ask, when it was the whole property? It's the village of Hnatnis. It's not exactly a top location. I'd rate it about 5 out of 10, and it's close to a small stream. Don't be fooled by these little streams. During floods, they can swell up and usually cause the biggest problems because they overflow and can even waterlog the house itself. And when we actually started clearing out the property, when we started tearing up the carpets, we found a lot of really significant things in that property. And under the carpets, there were even blood stains. There were documents from a criminal case, specifically from the rum affair. And the property actually came with a history, which we learned about shortly afterwards. The crucial thing was that a man died in that property. The father of a daughter who, together with her boyfriend, killed him. They killed him. It was a robbery murder. They killed him for money because they wanted to inherit, and in doing so, they actually closed one of those chapters, because that man was also prosecuted in the rum affair case. And of course we burned and destroyed all those documents so that the property would be clean, ready for sale. And in the end we sold it. I believe it was bought by foreigners to live in. I think they even did some renovations there. We'll go take a look, we'll go see what the property looks like today, what has happened there. But it's tied to this sad story that this robbery murder actually took place there.